James. Well, actually, it occurred to me that some of you all might not really know about the Yule goat.
I don't know about the Yule
How
goat.
dare you.
I don't know. Isn't it shocking? The Yule buck is, well, it's a very strong traditional decoration in Scandinavian countries, particularly Sweden. But there are some stories because, of course, when I first found this, brought it home, my husband's like, wow, you bought a Christmas goat. How nice is that? And I said, oh, well, let me tell you about why we might have this goat. Well, first part of the story goes back, you know, those old Norse gods, they always had stuff going on. Well, the god Thor, he had a chariot that would go across the sky. You know, it's a handy thing if you're going across the sky with a chariot to have something to help you. I mean, if you have to haul it yourself, it takes some of the glory out of it. So they said Thor, of course, he could have had any animal on the planet. And he thought about it, might have done some interviewing, and at last he said, aha! Because he was sort of princely. He said, you know, would be the perfect animal to take a chariot across the sky would be a team of 2 goats. Which you could kind of understand, maybe you would do that. So there were these 2 goats who had crazy Norwegian names that, I don't know, do you know how to say them, James?
Bone crusher, teeth masher. I don't
Oh,
remember
there you go.
Yeah,
Bone crusher, teeth masher.
that's right. Okay, they have names that sound cooler than that, but that's really what they were. These were not your everyday kind of nice goats. These were strong, bone crusher, teeth masher. These were strong goats. He would hook them up, take them across the sky, but, well, as often is the case in these stories, you know, you needed to have a feast. And if you arrived and there wasn't enough of the feast, well, Thor was known to take out his hammer. Yeah, he had that big hammer. And he would periodically slaughter his 2 goats. Oh, ew, damn. And make a very good meal. It's known that goats are actually pretty good to eat. Taste a lot like chicken. But
Much better.
these were not your everyday average goats. So, you know, somehow in the magic of how these myths go, the next day the goats would resurrect, be back ready to head off into the skies again, going up. So, as one would think, this would make them a little bit popular as they went forward. Well, as time went by, as winter solstice time came, that was often a time the goats were known as being come at harvest time, when they made these particularly harvest goats. You could use the last of the wheat that you had harvested, put them together there, wrap it up with red, which was, you know, kind of a good color around solstice time, and be able to do that. So people started having those. But, you know, there's always somebody who has to come along and ruin the deal. They said in the 1600s, it started to become a custom. Young men would dress up in hooded outfits like goats, and they would run around house to house, well, causing all kinds of trouble and mischief, and, I don't know, maybe knocking over outhouses. And, you know, they were doing some kind of things, and they said that the ministers and the priests started looking for those goat boys and saying they are nothing but demons. So, you know, we don't We don't want to have demons around so much. So it got kind of tamed down. They kept the goat idea. They stopped doing terrorist things with them and instead made them more into Christmas decorations. And you can have little small cute ones that go very well on Christmas trees. I have a few of those. This is a more moderate sized one, and they say every year in a certain city in Sweden they make a 42-foot tall Julebock that they sit out in the middle of town, and everybody remembers those thunderous goats that belong to Thor. So next time you see those, you should remember. I also want to tell you, Aunt Leanne was talking about the stag god.
Yeah, not a reindeer.
Not a reindeer. Now, I'm going to tell you, because it would just be a shame to bring these and not tell you what they are. This actually is an antler off of an actual reindeer. Now, of course, the people who are worrying about the animals being hurt in these stories, no animals are hurt in these stories. But as it turns out, what happens is with reindeer, just like leaves in the fall, they naturally shed their antlers. Nobody had to go and shoot the root off to get these antlers. This is actually a particularly cool set of antlers because I got it when I was visiting friends in northern Sweden, almost at the Arctic Circle. And they have an old family farm there. We were walking along and they were talking about how traditionally, and it continues on, the Sami people, who are the reindeer herder indigenous people in northern Sweden and in Finland and over into Russia, they herd reindeers, but in the wintertime they come farther south. And so our friends, this is part of the traditional area that the Sami people bring their reindeer. So they come down and they were just telling us about this and said, oh, you know, and the reindeer are here. And they looked down and said, why, here's an antler from a reindeer right here. Would you like to have it? Now, you say that to a storyteller. I'm like, absolutely, I need to have a reindeer antler. And of course, I had to make sure that nobody had killed any deers. But it was okay because they found out that. But I had a 21st century problem. We were in Sweden, needed to fly back to Denmark and back to the US. And I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to get this on a plane? And particularly because we were in Sweden just for a few days, we only had carry-on bags. Now I was imagining TSA problems. I have lost a nail scissors. I've had several things confiscated, and I thought, how is this going to happen? And I was expressing this concern to our Swedish friends, like, how are we going to get that in the airplane? Aren't they going to confiscate it? And they said, you're in Sweden. No problem. You said, we fly with antlers all the time. So I was still a little bit scared. Our bag went through and nobody blinked an eye. So there it was. This is my very own. And I made sure before we went into flying back to the States, I buried it very deeply in my checked luggage because I was not going to lose this. But this is the story of the real live reindeer antler. And I want to just tell you one more thing that you might not know, because I loved hearing about this. The Sami people, many people, of course, in winter solstice, with the very darkest night of the year, celebrate something how the sun needs to come back. And many Native Americans have stories like the raven might go and grab the sun going on. The Sami people have stories that the mother reindeer flies off to the south, gets a ball of sun in her antlers, and brings it back to the people of the north.
Excellent.
So I think it's important to know. And one more fact they told us is in the fall, the reindeer antlers that fall off right away are the males. So by the winter solstice time, the only deer that still have antlers on them are all female. So next time you see Santa and his sleigh, I want you to know probably Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen probably were all female.
Here we go, girl.